Hi, I am Gil Gershoni, and welcome to Dyslexic Design Thinking. Some people bring a book or a pair of headphones when they travel, but Harriet Riddell brings a sewing machine and a bicycle. Since 2012, Harriet has been making a living as a free motion embroidery artist. She founded her company InStitch at the university in the UK, and ever since then, she traveled all over the world, from Kenya to the Himalayas and beyond. She's here today to talk about her life, her work, and of course, her dyslexia. Harriet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Your work is so unique and your approach is so different and special. I'm almost hesitant to even try to describe it to our audience. How do you describe what you do?
I call myself a textile performance artist. I use a sewing machine as my medium, and I stitch people and places from life. So I call myself InStitch, and it's a little play on words there. Thank you, Dad. He came up with that one. And I document the moving world around me onto canvas using a line of thread and a whole bundle of different colored fabrics, which I applique onto my work to add color.
How did you get started? How did you find this technique and style? And tell me a little bit about how this all began for you.
So I went to art university. I did a 3-year degree. It was called Contemporary Applied Arts, and I got to play around with all different types of materials. I tried and failed at lots of different things. I found I was no good at following rules, I think, and contemporary craft. There's a lot of rules in craft, so there was a lot of rules to break there. And I guess art school is all about failing until you find your thing. And I was very lucky to find my thing, and that happened in the life drawing room. So I took my sewing machine in. Previously, I loved drawing the naked models, but I would work in pencil, and they were kind of scratchy drawings. And then I had been to an exhibition which inspired me to turn my head to the sewing machine and start to write words in Stitch, indoors, outdoors, because I craved to be outside. And I was weaving willow at the time, making these weird sculptures because I thought that allowed me to have a life outside. Thank goodness I found the Stitch, because I'm not sure how far I would have got in life with that. With my willow sculptures. And I say I found the sewing machine. I actually learned how to sew when I was about 5. My mum taught me. I've never seen her behind a sewing machine before. She's a crocheter. And my grandmother, who I should add is also dyslexic, is an artist in Canada, and she would make me these beautiful textile cards and send them over. So I grew up in England. So that was a big inspiration, and she taught me this free motion embroidery technique when I was about 10. So it took this very expensive 3-year art degree to sort of find myself back to where I began at 10. And throughout my teenage years, I played around with the sewing machine and stitched butterfly wings. And my teacher during textile classes at high school, it was the only class this ever happened. She'd say, if you get stuck, ask Harriet. There wasn't many other classes that happened, I can assure you. But I kind of just got the sewing machine. So then fast forward to university, I take my sewing machine into the life drawing room and I start to stitch the naked models. And have you ever tried life drawing?
Oh, so many times. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Excellent. Well, you know that the classes tend to be silent. Everyone's very concentrated. They're focusing on the models, and the sewing machine is not a silent tool. So it's there going while I'm trying to capture the model. But fortunately, my tutor was very supportive, and
Mm,
everyone forgave me for disrupting their piece. And I found my voice. It was a eureka moment where
wow.
it forced me to draw in a single line. So much like if you have a draw where you don't lift your pen up from the paper, it
Mm-hmm.
created this style and a narrative came out of me, and an imagination and a sense of humor as well. I was sort of finding anything slightly funny or witty within the composition of what I was drawing. So, and that had not shown up before in my scratchy pencil drawing. So it was a really an unlocked moment. And yeah,
So when you were 10, you learned how to stitch, but you also loved the outdoors, and then it took you all this sort of going to university and going to art school and sort of falling back into what was sort of so natural and maybe you know close to your heart. And is the first time you were stitching in public, was it with the vending machine? Was that the first time that kind of those two worlds start to collide?
I guess so. Other than the life drawing room and then the textile room, but of course, the
Right.
textile room is sewing machines are allowed there. But yeah, it was the vending machine.
You were saying that part of the way you discovered your medium and your voice was through failing
Hmm.
forward and in order to try to find it. I find so often is that my mom used to say that failing is not trying. If you try and you don't like, now you know. Or if you try and you are, maybe a beginner, then you get a chance to see where you are in the process. And if you love it, then you'll discover more of that pursuit. And I think that's very true to dyslexia, to creativity, is that we fail. Like we don't, there's certain things we're just not really that good at. And we keep trying and we have to get up and do it again and find other ways of expressing ourselves. I love how the art school part of your evolution, was pushing you by design to sort of experiment. You can call it failure, but like doing something you haven't done before
Hmm.
and finding your voice that goes back to your grandma and her studio and your art and your love and passion and communication, and then combining it with such an outside of the box approach to doing it in public, which I think a lot of people would just be uncomfortable doing any kind of creative expression in public because the chances are that you're going to maybe fail, right? Or that maybe
Hmm.
you make a mistake or that something might go wrong. How do you embrace that? Like when you stitching in public, what do you consider a mistake and how do you work with it?
That's a good question. When I work in public, there are no mistakes. um,
Good answer.
yeah, because it usually there's an audience. So, and I just have to keep going. I think with the audience, that's how the kind of performance comes alive within my work. And it's a very soft performance, as you can imagine. I'm just sat sewing, but um, having when I still feel like I'm performing, and before I set up, I'm very anxious and nervous. It never gets that never goes away. I guess like any standing in front of anyone on stage, I suppose. And I take that energy and just bring it into that work, and I kind of thrive from that energy, and it allows me to keep going and not second guess what I'm doing. And maybe a line didn't go to plan, there's no time to change that. And I'm not sitting there with an unpicker and unpicking things. I just keep on going, and actually, you're creating a bigger picture. And later on, what may have not been to plan uh, just sort of becomes a part of the picture. So, um, yeah. But if I'm working alone in my studio, which happens, that voice that tells you you've done something wrong or that wasn't to plan is much louder, and I struggle with that because things take me a lot longer and the focus isn't there, and so it's by being out with in the public, it sort of, I don't know, it just drives me forward.
Well, I know you and I talked about this in our previous conversation about how do we find the optimal environment so we can be our best selves. And often I find that what I used to do as a little kid, maybe I'm just playing in the dirt, or maybe I'm making, a costume or a piece of art out of cardboard, and and I forget, that 3 hours goes by, a half a day goes by, and I'm like, wow, man, I was so involved, so immersed. Those are the indicators where where that sort of combination of elements, space, people, performance, that adrenaline beforehand that sort of maybe helps us be hyper focused a little bit, really makes our differences, our diversity, our learning differences kind of, it gives you clues to where that space works for you and where other situation may be more challenging, right? I know it's very hard sometimes for me to sit still because everything is so exciting, everything is so stimulating that I almost need to have my environment match that stimulation that then calms me down. If I'm in a quiet environment, I can go completely mad. Like if I have one project to do, I'm so stressed out. But give me 25 projects to do, I'm in my happy place. Like, cause I just learned that that's how my energy, my creativity, my brain works. And if I feed that stimulation, then I'm almost sound like regulating my best self. I call it dancing with my dyslexia, because sometimes my
Nice.
dyslexia is very hungry and you have to feed it. Like I want to be disoriented, so I just have to create environments that are just going to be overwhelming for most, but are just so soothing for me, and I can't get enough of it. Do you relate to any of this? Is this anything that you
Yeah,
experience?
I do. Yeah, it's this sort of, someone said before that they can, you can take ages to find your focus, or the inability to focus, and there's times where it doesn't come. Um, yeah, there's other times that you're in, when you are focused, you can't unfocus. You're just on a roll and you can't tear yourself away from it. And I guess that is a happy place as well when you find that, like you get lost in that. Um, but I can definitely resonate with just being in chaos. Um, as long as that chaos is feeding the subject that I'm focusing on. So, um, yeah, working on a busy street with buses and people shouting and life going in front of me, that like allows me to focus. So I'm sat there because it's all, I'm absorbing that into the artwork. But if I was sat on that street trying to write up like my latest invoice to someone, like that is not gonna help. It's hard enough writing an invoice in
Yeah,
a quiet studio. um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I do understand that, and currently I've got a lot of big plates spinning, and I hadn't really thought about it the way you said, but I think I do quite enjoy the mayhem of and just trying to ride it. As long as you're riding it on your surfboard and it's, you're kind of ticking boxes and keeping everyone happy, then that's okay. It's, you just don't want to fall off that surfboard.
It's a full circle because as a dyslexic, and really you don't have to be dyslexic to embrace this, but the plates don't fall because you're comfortable with failure. Meaning, if the plate all of a sudden lost its momentum, you'll just adjust and it will be a different plate. It'll be a different stitch. It'll be like there's no mistake. So it's just like when I learned when that I know. again, because I'm comfortable with unknowing the outcome, I can embrace and take more risks,
Mm.
and spin more plates. And and sometimes, yeah, you drop a plate, but that's probably the biggest lesson. You realize, oh wow, I should have spun that plate faster. I needed two more plates and a saucer. I like whatever comes out of that situation, like stitching in front of the soda machine, or finding creative ways to power your sewing machine. There's always another solution around the corner, but maybe it was invisible before, before that, that dance occurred. I'm so curious to know, how did you start exploring powering the machine? Your machine. So you were going to cafes, you were getting permission, sometimes not, to plug here and to plug there. And then what was the first moment where you're like, okay, I want to be in more remote environment. I want to be more in the public eye. What was the first time that you had to kind of brainstorm around thinking about how to power the sewing machine in a creative way?
Um, so after graduating, I spent a year in London. I got a studio in Clapham, and I started stitching portraits at Greenwich Market. 15-minute portraits. People would sit there, and I was charging next to nothing, and but it was working, and I was making some money, which was exciting. So that first year was about kind of building the business and stitching events and weddings, which I still do, and I still stitch portraits. So sort of figuring out how I could make some money out of this, because I the leap from going from student into professional is, well, the difference is you've got to make money. So, um, but it worked, and I had done a few street stitches outside my studio, um, but I had longed to go to India,
Mm-hmm.
and since I was quite a young girl, there's a film called The Little Princess, and it's really caught my imagination as a child. And I collected saris and shisha mirrors, and I enjoyed the Hindu gods and all the artwork around them. So it only felt right that once I had enough money saved up, I would take my sewing machine to India. And it kind of coincided with a friend of mine who's a busker, or he was. He's a musician. He said he powers his amp with a motorcycle battery and an inverter, and couldn't that power my sewing machine? So I tried it. I took my sewing machine up to the Bluebell Woods, and with a mirror, and stitched my portrait in the woods alone this time.
Oh, wow.
um, and it worked. That was exciting. So you can't fly with batteries. I think they can put holes in airplanes or something. It doesn't sound good. So um, I would I picked up a motorcycle battery in Delhi, and I took my inverter, and that allowed me 2 or 3 hours per battery to stitch wherever I wanted. And I took a portable table and chair, um, and that freedom was so exciting. I felt drunk with freedom. And my first stitch in Delhi was in this really quaint little park that could have been in England. I think I was so intimidated by the city. It was just so much to take on that I wasn't quite ready to just dive in there with my stitching. So I found a very sort of quaint place and stitched there. But I got lots of lovely reactions from children and people around me, and it just built my confidence, which then I slowly started to explore more and more places around India.
And when did you start to introduce the bike?
The bike came a few years later. So obviously the batteries are fantastic until they die, which they often did. And then I would have to charge them, find a place, and they would take about overnight to charge. Um, and it was actually at Glastonbury Festival. I worked in the green craft area, which prides themselves on having no electricity at all. and my batteries, the festival's on for 5 days, so they kept dying, and I was struggling to find anywhere to charge them up. I was just doing scenes of other craftsmen making things out of wood or textiles. Um, so the following year, I came back with a bicycle. I thought people could pedal power their own portraits, because also the batteries are fantastic for sort of a scene, but portraits require a lot more energy because of the hair and the pace I work. It's very fast, and I wouldn't get through very many. So I thought, why don't I get my subject to pedal power their own portrait? Um, so I get them to pay me, and they ride a bike, and then I stitch their portrait on the bike with the power they create. Um, and that worked really well. Um, and then I would take that on the street. I could put my sewing machine kit behind my bike and ride it to a spot, unload, set up, and then invite people on the street to ride for just a minute while I was capturing what was around me, and then hope they stayed for 5 or 10,
Hmm.
and then convince them that they can't go until they found someone else to pedal.
I love
um,
that.
and that's been beautiful because it really brings the audience in, and it kind of I like the chat while I'm working and having people engage with me while I work. Again, allows me to focus crazily, um, and uh, and often the people who are on the bike are from the place, or they know more about what I'm looking at, so they tell me stories, and then that feeds back into the artwork too. And they feel a part of it. So they come back with their friend and say, "Oh, I stitched that building, or I did this," and that's lovely.
Yeah, it sounds like it sort of brought a whole new dimension to the collaboration and the co-creation,
Mm-hmm.
and a way to sort of take, different types of individuals and the different type of, different type of minds, and through this sort of co-creation, mind meld a little bit. When I ride a bike, after the first 5 minutes, my brain I'm clear. I'm much less tense. I get to, if I'm riding with a friend or a colleague, I get to sort of kind of share a little bit more personal information. Do you find when people pedal for portraits, they kind of open up?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, whether the portrait sitting, even without the bike, I find people do it, tell me all sorts of interesting things. But when I'm stitching a scene rather than their portrait, um, that is nice because people do really just relax and and talk about all sorts, and you learn about that person. Um, and I really encourage that. Like, tell me your secrets.
Oh, really?
um,
And what's the
but
reaction? Do they?
uh, well, initially, like anyone, people get a bit like they struggle to talk about themselves. Um, they can do initially, but that's all I want them to do is just talk at me and let me listen, and that's I just focus with that kind of natter, and then it
Mhm.
really does sort of give me little words they'll say will just jump out at me, and then I'll stitch them into the artwork, and um, which then sort of brings them in, I guess.
I saw a video of you of stitching a portrait of a young man, and I think you told me like you have to keep pedaling because I need more power. Like 'cause I think he was sort of like falling behind a little bit, and you can see as soon as you told him like he's like he just really started to work, and then your machine came back to life, and um, I think that there's something so interesting in the rhythm and the texture of embroidery, as you were mentioning in your early days when you were doing some nude drawings and everything is so quiet, but then your machine is sort of thumping away and creating this sort of almost drum beat rhythm. I find that in the dyslexic design thinking, there's a lot of commonality with neurodiverse strength like pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, rethinking, kind of exploring different ideas. Tell me a little bit of the relationship to the rhythm and the textures of the medium for you? Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night dreaming in sewing machine beats and rhythms? I mean, how does it? What's your relationship to the tactility, the full body, the sound, the overall experience for you?
Hmm. Um, my art teacher used to always say, while we're drawing, like, find the rhythm of the face. And I used to think, what's he going on about? What rhythm? And then I think by using the sewing machine, I really found it. And having that single line forced this sort of, oh, there's like a path and there is a rhythm of the face. And um, so now when I teach classes, I'm up there going, find the rhythm of the face. And they're all looking at me, what are you talking about? Um, but yeah, sometimes I think I'm fed up of stitching. Um, but as soon as I get on it and that needle hits the canvas and there's like these little stitch lines, it's just like, yeah. I like the tactile nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the spatial awareness um, is a sort of power uh, that I only was really told I had during a dyslexia test. Like back in the education system, you'd have these sort of, they would test you to check your dyslexia, or and of course I'd spell cat TAC, and everything would kind of come out in different ways. But when it came to the shapes bit, like that was, I had no problem. There was like, you had to sort of organize the shapes to fit a block, and I think that is a part of my dyslexia that really helps me negotiate a scene that I'm looking at, and then knowing how to rebuild that onto this, 70 by 30 centimeter piece of canvas. And it's that kind of spatial awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, finding the rhythm of the line that goes through it all. And but yeah, definitely after a day of portraits, especially at the beginning, because I was doing so many in a day to try and make it work, that I'd get on the tube to go home and be looking at everyone's face, being like, well, the rhythm is around that eye, and then I go around that eye, and I come around that nose, and then I go around, like trying to turn it off. It's hard.
I hear you on that. I hear you on that. There's something really special, if you out there draw and to do a single, a complicated a building, a face, a portrait, or whatever it is in a single line. It's you do get, after quite a bit of play, good, bad, or difference, but at least you get into some sort of a flow. It's almost like water. There's a certain sort of dance that happens with it. And I don't know if you feel the same way when you're looking at, like, if you paint a stitching outside. Like for me, is a I'm a branding, graphic design, advertising. Like I can look at visual compositions and I can tell they speak to me. Like I can tell when there is imbalances, or I can tell when they're not really, they're forced, or they're not telling the truth, or there's something about it. And if I just listen, if I don't try to control it, or if I just listen over time, I've developed the ability just to know exactly where it is and trust it. And then trust that because I can fell forward, let's just go down the path and we will figure out the imbalance and how to get it back to a line, or to be a composition, or to, yeah. And I think it's definitely, to your point, I think it's definitely spatial, it's definitely spatial reasoning, it's pattern recognition. But when you're not dyslexic, when you're talking about pattern recognition, it's like, oh, so you see patterns. No, I'm seeing almost the pattern between the pattern. You
Mm-hmm.
know, yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and it doesn't really stop, does it? It's everywhere. It's um, I don't know, like you're always looking and seeing, so you can create these. You can see those rhythms and patterns, and or assessing other people's work, like the poster on the back of the loo in the service station, and you're like looking at how they've composed that and thinking about this and the sort of flow. then you
Hmm.
see the fire extinguisher and how that looks so sweet next to the drain pipe there, and there's somehow that calls you,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
even though it's just a fire extinguisher.
yeah. I I can relate to that. I I often see the space between things. I don't know if you have the same thing. Like when I look at letters, for me they're just negotiable graphical shapes. You know, it's I have to really work hard to assign them non-negotiable meanings, right? Is that this is A, B, C. Like, you know, if you put these in the right order, that spells cat. And at the end of the day, even if I spell cat correctly, I put so much effort trying to decode these non-negotiable symbol, which are negotiable to me. That, but at the end of the sentence, I don't even really care for the meaning as much anymore. I'm just so relieved that I got to the end of the sentence, you know. But at the
Hmm.
same time, when I'm looking at those letters, I see the space between them, and I see it everywhere. So I can be going to a restaurant and seeing a menu, and half the time I'm just critiquing the negative space between the ingredients. And I was like, why is it all capitalized and there's no comma? And I'm like, all these variables. I'm like, no, you know. And then the food is delicious, but I was like, the food is so well prepared and so beautifully put together, but then you couldn't have balanced your menu right. Like it just drives me mad. I'm like, come on, you know. But eventually I've learned that I just need to just embrace that and let it be what it is. Otherwise, it's very noisy. It's very bright and very noisy a lot of the time, you know.
Hmm.
So you currently living off the grid,
Yeah.
and who's riding the bike when you're home?
My 3-year-old can't reach the pedals yet. Um, he's in training.
Oh, good. How do you guys manage?
We have, so we are in a woodland. We have solar panels,
I see.
which are pretty effective for most part. I mean, I have a fridge 6 months of the year, luxury, even has ice cream.
Wow.
Um, After that, uh, we're just using the kind of cold of the outside. So we're coming up to the kind of challenging stage actually where the fridge has got to go off, but it's still quite warm. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of problems to be solved, but I quite enjoy that.
Mm,
We collect rainwater and then that's sort of filtered for washing and hair and um, yeah, so it's an interesting way of life. It's definitely not for
mm,
everyone, but we've made a very cozy little corner and
mm-hmm,
quite enjoy it.
mm. Where are you in your journey toward embracing your dyslexia, if you had to say? Like, do you feel like you are? Do you love your dyslexia? There's no. Is there
Resentment,
any what?
resentment.
Resentment, fear? I don't want to put any words in your mouth. I want you just to hear where you are with your journey.
Um, well, I think I'm very like fortunate to be my own boss and just create my own path in this world, which I love. I think that's essential, and perhaps I guess that's come from dyslexia and the way I think, and just needing that um, freedom to be myself. Uh, I think my biggest struggles are, I mean, kind of superficially, they're my mess. And you're talking about your studio and the mess, and I can get really bogged down in like order and trying to order myself. Yeah, I can like order myself around the world, and I enjoy booking travel and like linking my journeys, and I can be very organized or spontaneous, and that's okay. There's no fear there, and but when it comes to like tidying up my desk, it's just like I find that can be really overwhelming. Um, Not really sure like how to deal where to put things. Like it's really minor, but it yeah, really plays on my mind. Like my studio currently is, this is not my studio. I'm in Denise's studio. She's a children's book illustrator, and her studio is always immaculate. And mine is not. It's just chaos, um, and sometimes I find that quite hard. If I'm like, I wish sometimes I strive for this kind of. I wish I could be really neat and have like order all the time.
What
And
would
I
you do
feel like
with
there's
it?
a battle.
Yeah, but if it was all nice and tidy, it probably drives you mad. You'd be like, now what? What is left? Do you think?
True. Although like my partner just spent like 2 days, me and my son went away and he like did this deep tidy of our house, and oh, it's been great. Came back, I'm like,
Well, there you
I
go.
I can't like do it. It's just like I think everything, every object opens so many things in my brain that it's like you get lost in. It takes half a day to do like half a meter, and
Hmm.
yeah. So I think that's probably like from my day to day life. Those are sort of my challenges of like trying to master a
Hmm.
um a sort of space that I'm
Hmm.
happy, but I can work within it. Like I just squirrel on in the mayhem, but
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
is something that in me that wishes I could be a bit more like Denise.
Do you have any maybe tips or tricks that you use to make your life a little easier?
Um, well, I think the overwhelm. I think what I'm talking about is overwhelm, I suppose, and that's where it becomes all a bit much. And exercising the power to like step over that and just realize it's okay, it's all right, I'm okay, we're okay, life's all right, and just sort of, and when that hits, that I feel like so much more relaxed. So it's sort of I'm trying to get better at it, like not getting too frustrated at myself. I think that's like the biggest thing, isn't it? You get this
Mm,
frustration, um, and just trying to step over it and ask for help as well. Like
mm,
I still need to sometimes ask someone to help me come in and sort my studio out. I have a friend called Laura, and she's a very linear thinker, and she's brilliant because she'll just sort of, I'll talk to her about all my ideas, and she'll just be like, right, let's just talk about this one idea. And she sort of helps me with my studio, and so that's okay. That's all right. And
mhm,
maybe I
mhm.
bring something to her life too that's a little bit more
For
muddled and
sure,
crazy.
for sure, for sure. What would you say is your hyperability?
Hmm. I suppose it's connecting with people. I think I enjoy people and I enjoy connecting with them, but also being able to like be connect with someone as myself, but also with the art and let the art connect with them too. It's like this three-way thing happening. um, and I imagine that is a hyperability because I don't think there's lots of people out there doing that. I think that's what makes me special.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
this uh, connection between myself, but then also you realize that your pictures and your art connect with people, and then yeah, it's just like the rhythm of that, I suppose, and
Hmm. Hmm.
um, yeah, but I don't know what allows that, um, or what makes that, but definitely gets me excited and it's sort of what makes me turn up to work every day is
Hmm.
having that connection. Um,
Hmm.
it goes beyond just a pretty picture, I suppose, on the wall.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I can understand that. I like that a lot. Have you met through your travels? Have you met other fellow dyslexics?
Well, probably. I'm not so sure. Some people I meet and I think, you've got to be dyslexic.
Hmm.
I actually met a friend. I was at a festival a few weekends ago, and I just like sorted out my tent because I needed to get it in order and like create my little nest and have it, which takes probably hours longer than the average person. But and then I saw another friend of mine who's an artist. She makes perfume. She has perfume workshops, and her tent looked. She looked like she was at the beginning stage of her. She just had a crazy tent around. And I thought, I wonder if she's dyslexic. And then she didn't. She said a little while later, without prompting, "Oh, I'm dyslexic." So I was like, knew it, spotted you. Um, but I do think I'm surrounded by neurodiverse people. I think I've created a life, um, yeah, surrounded by different
Hmm.
kinds of thinkers. My friend
Hmm.
group, a lot of creatives, a lot of self-employed people,
Hmm.
very disproportionately to, I think, a lot of other friend groups potentially. Um,
Hmm.
yes,
Hmm.
I guess that's what makes me feel normal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I what I guess what advice would you give dyslexic that maybe yet are yet to embrace their gift?
I suppose be patient with yourself
Hmm.
and uh, and just be like open and ready to embrace your ideas. Um, yeah, just and it will like you'll find your thing. It will
Hmm.
happen as long as you're receptive and you're willing to experiment. I suppose is we're not using the word fail, but
Hmm.
experiment. And every time something doesn't work or feel good, that's just learning that it's not it's not
Hmm. Hmm.
the road for you. Um, yeah, and that like I don't know. There's lots of people out there who you're not alone.
Yeah,
There's lots of different thinkers out there, and um, yeah,
yeah, there's some good advice there for sure. I
thank you.
find that sometimes when I look for things, I tend to not find them because I'm looking in the wrong places. I already have preconceived assumptions about what it's supposed to be like, or how am I going to make a living, or how is it going to work out, or so we start to sort of critique ourselves before we even created a mess, and
Hmm.
just allowing myself to think about what did used to give me joy. It can be anything. When I was 10 years old, what gave me joy? Oh, it was just like doodling or drawing a tree in a single line. Start right there. Pull on that thread because
Mm.
that's the indicator that your body, your talent, your psyche, your emotional well-being is soothed by some of those actions. And if that's the only things that you get out of it, isn't that enough already? But the thing that happens when we pursue those things that give us those pieces of joy, and that's almost the point of it, then they attract more of it. Then you find more of those friends that are maybe also neurodiverse, or they're also dense differently, or that do other things that inspire you. And the more you collect those moments, the more it comes into your own. And
Hmm.
you can never imagine. I mean, I don't know if you could have, but I know that I would have never imagined I would end up where I am today if I planned it. I know I just
Hmm.
continued pursuing, going toward things that gave me joy, things that I learned I was good at, wrestle with things I wasn't so good at, and understand myself better. But I would be surprised if you would have arrived here because your intention was to power a sewing machine by a bike. and sketch portraits. Like, how do you even come up with that? That is a dyslexia thing. Like, you came with it because you just pursued all the little bits and pieces that remind you of your family, your grandma, your art, your, just being being at your maybe father's pub and learning how to talk to strangers and, living off the grid and figuring out how to be resourceful and figure out how to, get power. But then the power comes from the collaborator, which you're sketching, which becomes this whole conversational ecosystem. Like, how do you even start to imagine that, And I think to your advice to people that haven't embraced dyslexia yet is to look at yourself as a whole person and to cherish the things that you're so good at. Because if nothing else, it would allow you to climb the challenging mountain of reading and writing with a bag or with a suitcase of the things that give you joy. And, and I think that is such a simple thing when you start to sort of lean toward that,
That's very cool, very beautiful.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
it is like breaking down, because when you ask me that, it's like, where do you begin? But you just, the tiny steps, isn't it? It's just what's in front of you, what makes you happy, what's this moment here, and then rather than thinking the huge mountain that you're about to climb, which is where the overwhelm hits in, and you think, "Ugh, who
Yeah.
am I? What do I do? What am like? Just a little step. Like, what makes me happy today? And yeah,
At the end of the day, everything is a little step. There's no really big steps. When you take a big step, you miss the steps because the little steps is how we're humans. We have to walk. Walking is falling and catching yourself every time you take a step, and it's like that's the little step. It's just like if you want to get across the street, take a little step. Take a little step before you know it, you're across the street of whatever you're trying to do, and it becomes a lot easier to sort of if nothing else, enjoy the journey and find the things that give you joy that you didn't even know because you just crossed the street, That's all you did. And it's like, oh yeah, I should sketch that.
yeah.
Um,
And I think something like focus. You as a human can really only do one thing at a time. Like you're focusing on, and your focus is so precious and should be like cherished. Uh, and that's why like there's all these distracting things like your Instagram scrolling, and it's like that's stealing from your focus. If you can, you have to use it very carefully, and I think that when you kind of realize that, it's really helped me find my focus, I guess, and um, just understanding its like value and its potential, because I think you can take it for granted and like, why am I doing all these things? It's like because you can only do one of them at a time.
I just want to thank you for being so honest with us today, Harriet, and joining us today and sharing your story with our audience. I know it's going to mean the world for everybody. We'll make sure to have your websites and your projects and links to all of your social in the
Thank you.
podcast notes. And just thank you very much again. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe to this series wherever you get your podcasts. Visit DyslexicDesignThinking.com to learn more about our latest initiatives, including Dear Dyslexia, the postcard project, or to book Gil to speak at your next event or conference. Stay connected on Instagram at Dyslexic Design Thinking, or drop us a line at dyslexic@gershoni.com to receive our monthly newsletter and learn more about our upcoming programming. Dyslexic Design Thinking is produced by Gershoni Creative. Until next time, be well.